For those who don't know me, my name is Jonathan, and I am the country head for RISE here in Malaysia. RISE is a corporate innovation powerhouse headquartered in Thailand, and our big, hairy, audacious goal is to drive 1% GDP growth in Southeast Asia. And how do we do that? We do that by helping corporates and government around Southeast Asia to innovate faster through our innovation tools and training. But today, I'm not here to talk about RISE. I'm here to talk about the Innovation Leadership Forum. So just a bit of background about the Innovation Leadership Forum for those who are joining us for the first time. This is an intimate monthly gathering of like-minded leaders and captains of business and industries in Southeast Asia to learn about new practices in the innovation space as well as tech trends that are happening in the region. So every month we curate this event and we invite subject matter experts and practitioners to come in and share with the audience on what's happening around the region. So today we have a very exciting agenda lined up for you guys. Before I talk about this month's agenda, I wanted to, sorry, can we go back to the agenda slide, please? Thank you so much. So before I jump into today's agenda, I'd like to an event that happened last month. Last month, we had the pleasure of Vice President of MDEC, as well as Dr. Kit, Group CEO of RISE, speaking on innovating during a crisis. We all know that COVID-19 pandemic is happening at the moment, and it is a real challenge for corporations to, realign their strategies and come up with new innovation to allow their business to survive. So last month's inaugural event was a kickoff session for us, and we had more than 50 people pre-registered for the event, and out of 50, more than 45 actually turned up. And this is with minimal to no marketing at all. This month, it's more exciting. We've actually got more than 95 people pre-registered for the event. So I'm sure they'll be streaming in today. Unfortunately for Zoom, at a webinar level, they can only support 100 participants. If it reaches 100, we will be very excited. But fear not, we are recording the session, and this session will be shared at a later date. So if I can move on to the agenda now. As you can see, we are running just a little bit behind time, but we hope to get through all the events by 11 o'clock still. And after my opening remark, I will be introducing Pedro, the guest speaker who will be talking. I will share a little bit more details about the speaker later. I want to also highlight to the audience who are joining us for the first time or are not familiar with Zoom. We have a Q&A button right at the bottom. If you have any questions that you want to direct at Pedro or myself, please click on the Q&A button and submit your questions there. We will then run through the questions and hopefully be able to answer them by 10:55 today if you are based out of Singapore or Kuala Lumpur, or at 9:55 if you are in Bangkok and Thailand. We have, as I mentioned before, more than 95 registered participants. This participants from the region, from Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, and Indonesia. But we also have a handful from Europe and the UK. So we are happy to welcome them to our event as well. Last but not least, we have a surprise at the end of the event. So don't leave after the Q&A session. Please stay on until we have actually highlighted what the surprise is for you guys who are attending the session today. Next, I would like to introduce Pedro. our guest speaker for today. Pedro is a person with more than 15 years experience. He has an MBA from the University of Chicago School of Business, Chicago Booth School of Business, and has worked with many high-profile organizations such as the French Telecom, and Water. His latest role is actually the group head as well as artificial intelligence, which is going to be the topic that he's speaking on today. So I won't speak too much about him. I'm sure he will do a fantastic job in his presentation today. Without further ado, if I can invite Pedro to come online, and he will take over. Please welcome Pedro. Thank you so much.
That I have for today. So I hope that everybody can see the slides. Well, very good. So the topic that I had prepared for today is the age of artificial intelligence in the workplace and how COVID-19 has accelerated this transition, right? So how is artificial intelligence going to impact the workplace? How is it going to change our lives at work? And how COVID-19 has just impacted that transformation. So the first question, or the way I would like to start this presentation, is talking about science fiction, right? There are many robotic dystopias. What is your favorite science fiction movie? Is it maybe Terminator, which is a robot coming from the future to kill human beings? Is it maybe Star Wars and its armies of thousands of millions of robots? Is it maybe Ex Machina, which is the story of a robot that reveals herself against her creator? Or is it maybe I, Robot, another film, which describes a revolution of robots against human beings? Well, no matter what science fiction movie you choose, I bet it will have something to do with artificial intelligence, because AI is such an integral part of our lives. It's such an integral part of our future. And no matter what science fiction movie you choose, I bet it will portray an extremely negative version or an extremely negative vision of artificial intelligence and what the relation between machines and human beings is going to be in the future. And this very negative vision of AI extends to the workplace. A lot of people, like for example myself, are afraid that AI is going to take our jobs away. A lot of people are afraid that the workplace is going to become a place where artificial intelligence is making all the decisions and where there is no room for empathy or there is no room for interpersonal relations. We are afraid that the workplace is going to be a place where everything that matters is productivity, and we know that machines are better at productivity than we are. So there are many things that are happening in artificial intelligence right now, right? There are many things that are happening in research and development for artificial intelligence. So for example, we see self-driving cars. We see that there are algorithms that can predict whether we are gonna buy a certain product or whether we are gonna pay our loans back to the bank. We see that there are algorithms that are able to identify faces or are able to identify emotions even better than human beings. Well, this negative vision of artificial intelligence is very widespread, but does it really need to be that way? Is artificial intelligence really going to result in net job losses? Is artificial intelligence really going to make the future a less human place? What I'm going to analyze today in detail is what is the impact of artificial intelligence in jobs and in the future of work, and also what is the kind of effect that COVID-19 is just having in this transformation, right? So let's start analyzing what is a job and what is the difference between the kinds of skills that we have in different jobs, right? So everybody knows what a job is. A job is what you do for a living, right? And within a job, you need to apply different skills because there are different tasks, different activities that you have to do within a job. And each one of the tasks is basically a skill, right? Doing well each one of the tasks is basically a skill. Some of the tasks are boring, some might be more interesting, some might be more difficult, some might be more easy. There are mainly three kinds of skills that you will have to put in place in a typical job. And those skills are repetitive skills or process-oriented skills, quantitative skills, and what I call functional skills. So let's go one by one. So repetitive skills are the skills that have to do with processes. For example, my first job, even before going to university, was to be a dishwasher. I was in charge of washing dishes, and there were many kinds of dishes, but each one of them had to follow the same process. Washing every kind of dish was exactly the same. It was very, very repetitive. This is repetitive skills. Jobs that are very heavy on repetitive skills are, for example, any kind of manual work, any kind of physical work, any kind of paperwork, and well, this is the first kind, right? The second kind is quantitative skills, and quantitative skills is what I did, for example, in my second job. When I graduated from university as an engineer, I was a programmer, and I had to develop algorithms and software and make numbers, and this was very, very, very quantitative. Other jobs that are heavy on quantitative skills are, for example, scientists, engineers, mathematicians, etc. And the third kind of skill is the functional or cross-functional reasoning skills. And these are the skills that have to do with people relations and with creativity. So for example, my current job as a department head is very heavy on functional skills because I have a team. I have to manage the team, I have to manage conflict, I have to create a strategy for that team. I have to coordinate my work with the work of other departments or with other functions, and this is why we call them functional skills. All management jobs are very heavy on functional skills. Okay, so all kinds of jobs are going to have a certain combination of all these three kinds of skills, but most of the jobs are particularly heavier on one of these three kinds of skills. So for example, my current job, as I said, is heavier on functional skills. Maybe your current job is heavier on quantitative skills or a different kind of skills. Now, artificial intelligence has nothing to do with jobs. Artificial intelligence has everything to do with skills. Artificial intelligence is not going to automate jobs. It's going to automate certain skills that are played inside different kinds of jobs. And the extent to which each kind of skill can be automated depends heavily on the nature of that skill. So for example, process-oriented skills, what I call repetitive skills, are very heavy, are very easy to automate because they are just following a process. Repetitive skills are heavy, are gonna be heavily automated over the next 10 years. And I would say that around 80% or most of these skills are gonna be automated. They will be performed by machines, and only 20% of them will be still performed by humans. Then we have the second category, the quantitative skills, and this will be 50-50 because calculations can be done by machines, but sometimes human beings need to apply their knowledge or their judgment in order to make sure that these calculations make sense. And finally, we have the cross-functional reasoning skills, and these skills are very difficult to automate because they involve people, because they involve uncertainty, because they involve ambiguity, because they involve creativity. And as a result, over the next 10 years, most of them will continue to be done by human beings. And machines will only be able to do a small part of that. So it will be basically 80% human and 20% machine. So as a summary, repetitive skills will be heavily automated. Functional skills, on the other hand, are going to continue to be done mainly by human beings. And in the middle, we have quantitative skills. Now, as you see, some professions are going to grow based on this transition of skills, right? Based on the skills automations. And some professions are going to fall in decline. But most of the professions are going to dramatically change. Those professions that will grow are those that are heavy on quantitative skills and on functional skills, and those professions that will fall in decline are those that are heavier on repetitive skills. So people will have to migrate from jobs that are growing to jobs that are, from jobs that are in decline to jobs that are growing. From jobs that are heavy on repetitive skills to jobs that are heavy on quantitative and functional skills. We will talk later about these job migrations. but we will see that this will require a massive rebalancing of our skills. And additionally, as it has happened other times in history, technology is going to create a lot of new jobs that do not exist today. And AI is going to be a major source of those jobs. So let's go to the first category of skills. This is the repetitive skills, right? So these were the skills that will be done mainly by machines. We call these machines no-collar workers. These are the workers who are robotic. These are the workers who are not human, and therefore they don't have a neck, and therefore they don't have a collar. So blue collar, white collar, no collar. So no collar is how we are starting calling these robots that are going to help us in our tasks. No collar workers are going to be involved in paperwork, in any kind of department, for example, in finance, in human resources, in procurement. They're also going to be doing any kind of physical work. They are going to be doing, for example, any kind of construction work. So, for example, robots are going to check us out in the supermarket. We're going to have robots that are going to set meetings for us. We're going to have robots that are going to manage our agenda. So what human beings are going to do when it comes to repetitive tasks? They're basically not going to do the actual work, because the actual work is going to be done by our no-collar workers. Humans are going to be focused on supervising the robots. They are going to be focused on troubleshooting the robots. They are going to be focused on making sure that the whole robotic process is running smoothly. For example, in a supermarket, supermarkets in the future, and many supermarkets right now are already using self-checkout machines. The cashier is not longer going to check out the people. It's going to be a machine. It's going to be a robot that is going to check out the people. But there might still be one person there. And he or she is going to make sure that the process works well. He or she is going to make sure that it's going to make some recommendations to the client. And it's going to give conversation to the client, which is very, very important when it comes to customer experience. Other jobs in this category could be, for example, drone troubleshooters. It could be 3D printing supervisors, and many other kinds of jobs that are going to appear in this category in the next decade. So how is COVID-19 going to impact this trend? Well, COVID-19 is totally accelerating this trend. Companies, right now, many companies are in a difficult situation after months of no revenue, and they are going to increase automation in order to improve competitiveness. COVID-19 accentuates this trend. COVID-19 is going to bring manufacturing away from countries such as China back into developed countries, but these manufacturing activities are probably not going to go into jobs. They are going to go into automation. Having said that, as I was saying before, there will be still jobs of people who are going to be supervising and troubleshooting these manufacturing processes that will be done by no-collar workers. So this is the first transition. Here we have the process-oriented skills and the arrival or the advent of no-collar workers. But we have a second category, and this second category is the quantitative jobs, right? This second category is very important because it's going to be automated at 50%. Only half of these activities will be done by robots. The other half is going to be done by humans. And this is very special because since half is done by a robot and half is done by a human, there has to be robot-human collaboration, right? So there has to be processes, there have to be a governance that allows robots and allows human beings to collaborate with each other. And robots will specialize in some parts of this process, in some certain kinds of calculations, maybe because they are heavier in volumes. And humans will specialize in those parts of the calculations that are going to be more complicated, maybe more ambiguous, those parts that require subject matter expertise, those parts that require more judgment. So robots are going to realize when human beings are having trouble doing their part of the job, and they are going to propose, they are going to suggest, they are going to volunteer to help humans when they get in trouble. And at the same time, robots are going to realize when they themselves are in trouble, and they are going to ask human beings for help, for guidance to finish their part of the job. One example that I particularly like about this human-machine collaboration is breast cancer identification or identification of any kind of cancer. The way you identify cancer, for example, breast cancer, is, well, somebody has to analyze medical images that show the shape of the tissues, of the body tissues. And by looking at how these tissues look like, a robot will say, or a doctor will say, well, this looks like a cancer, or this doesn't look like a cancer. Well, according to Harvard research, a robot can identify breast cancer from medical images with an accuracy which is around 92%. And 92% sounds very, very high, right? It sounds very, very, very good. Having said that, a human being can identify the same cancer, a human doctor can identify the same cancer a little bit better with an accuracy of 96%. But what is really amazing is that when they do this together, they can identify the cancer with a 99% accuracy. And this is why human-machine collaboration is so, so important. Having said that, this is not going to be totally easy, right? There are many things we will have to change in our habits, in our work, in order to make this collaboration happen. So for example, processes will have to change, layouts will have to change. Just to give you an example, if you put robots in a warehouse, you will have to select some areas only for robots, some areas only for human beings. You will have to change the layout. You will also have to define interactions between the robots and the machines. There will have to be a governance framework. There will have to be a communication framework, because this communication will have to be very, very, very clear, right? So we will have to change completely the way we work in order to be able to collaborate with these robots. As I was saying before, many jobs will appear in this category. And some of the jobs that will appear here will be, for example, AI integration, or AI interaction designers, simplicity consultants, well-being coaches, analytics HR. We already have a lot of work being done in HR analytics, and also citizen data scientists, right? Now the question about COVID-19 is, well, how is COVID-19 going to change this transition, right? How is going to accentuate or not accentuate the importance of human-machine collaboration? I think COVID-19 in this case is relatively neutral. I don't think COVID-19 accelerates or slows down this transition. I think this transition is not happening because of cost reduction like the previous one, which is what COVID-19 is having an impact on. I think this transition is happening mainly because of scalability and productivity reasons. And this is a very firm transition, but I think COVID-19 is probably less involved in this transition as it was involved in the previous one. And now I'm going to go to the third kind of skills. These are the cross-functional reasoning skills. To make it shorter, functional skills. And these skills are very, very particular as well. They're very interesting because they will not be automated, or at least they will not be automated in the next 10 to 20 years. Artificial intelligence is going to automate the other kinds of skills, repetitive skills and quantitative skills, but human beings will continue being doing these cross-functional reasoning skills mainly. That basically means that AI is basically going to push human beings towards the skills that cannot be automated by machines. These are the functional skills. And this is what happened to me as well. This is what happens in any career transition, right? So as I was saying before, my first job was very heavy on process-oriented skills. My second job was very quantitative, and my current job is very cross-functional, right? This is the normal transition that you have in any career, and artificial intelligence is gonna accelerate this transition in everybody, right? And I think that moving everyone in this transition is good. I think it's good for two reasons. The first thing, this is good because these kind of cross-functional skills are the skills that are intrinsically human. These are the skills that make us human, because machines cannot do that. And these skills are related to people, to creativity, to ambiguity. These are things that are uniquely human. And the other reason why this is important is because the importance of these skills in the job market is going to increase. Since machines can do every other skill, people who can do these skills better are going to have a much better much more opportunities in the job market, because there will be less competence to do these skills, because machines will not be playing in this area. Many jobs that are gonna arrive in the future, that are gonna be created in the future in this area are, for example, professional drivers, insight enablers, Freelance professors, this is very important. I mean, and in my company, we did have a freelance professor already, and I think we're gonna have much more in the future, and UX UI interaction specialist. By freeing employees from having to handle all these other tasks, I mean the repetitive tasks and the quantitative tasks, employees are gonna focus on the part of their task, on the part of their job that require more empathy, that requires more emotional intelligence, that requires more communication with other people. One example, chatbots, customer service chatbots. Well, chatbots and computer software can handle around 80% of the queries that you make to a call center or that you make using a chat on Facebook to a brand, right? 80% of those queries can be handled by the machine. Only 20% of the queries has to be channeled through a person, through a human customer service representative. And these are the 20% of the queries that machines cannot do. These are the queries that I was saying before that require more empathy, that maybe are more complex, that require a contextual understanding of the customer, that require a deeper communication with the customers. But what is really interesting is that these 20% of the queries are typically the queries that customer service representatives enjoy most. Typically, people like interacting with other people. They don't like doing things that are repetitive. Typically, people like empathy, right? And this is very, very good because customer service representatives typically find these queries more rewarding because they involve other human beings. And similar to other kinds of and this also applies to other kinds of jobs. People typically prefer the part of the job that involves interaction with other human beings, that involves empathy, and they typically don't like those parts that do not involve this kind of aspects, right? And this is very good. This is very good because artificial intelligence is not going to make the workplace a less human being. Artificial intelligence is going to make the workplace a much more human being. And this is the gift of AI to mankind. Artificial intelligence is gonna push us towards the skills that are more human, that are more empathetic, that make us uniquely human, because all the other skills will be done by machines. And this is great news. As I'm saying, this is the gift, in my view, this is the gift of AI to mankind. Because for the first time in history, workers will be able to be human. Completely human for the first time. We will not need to care about processes or numbers. We will just focus on human relations and human interactions. We will just focus on being human. So now, how is COVID-19 and social distancing and working from home impacting this trend? Well, I am at home. I think most of you are also at home. In the age of social distancing and in the age of working at home, I think the importance of of interpersonal skills is even more important. It becomes much more critical because people cannot meet, because people have to work remotely, because people have less opportunities to interact with each other in the way we used to do before. That's why people who are able to do this well will have an edge. So in my view, artificial intelligence is also, in my view, COVID-19 is also accelerating the importance of this group of skills, and it's also accelerating the transition towards this group of skills. Having said that, these skill set transitions have happened many times throughout history, right? So I'm leading to the conclusion that people are going to have to upgrade their skills according to this skill set ladder from repetitive skills to quantitative skills, to functional skills. And we are all gonna have to change our jobs according to this skill set ladder. But this is not the first time that happens in history. There have been many transitions similar to this one. For example, the transition from manual work to steam took decades. The transition from steam into electricity also took decades. The automation of agriculture happened over a generation. This basically means that the children of farmers were able to learn at school what will be the skills that will be relevant in the next generation, what will be the skills that will be relevant in the future job market, like mathematics, like maybe some industrial skill sets, like maybe speaking better English, etc., etc. So the children of farmers, while the agricultural automation, the revolution of agriculture was happening, were able to learn these skills. But artificial intelligence is coming much faster. Artificial intelligence is not something that is going to happen next decade. It's something that is happening right now. And it's happening to us. So it will not be our children who will have to learn the new skills. It will be ourselves. It will be ourselves who will have to learn the new skills for our jobs, because our jobs are going to change. And this is not going to be easy for everyone. Some people will find it easier, but many people will struggle. I'm just going to give you an example, a hypothetical example. Imagine that you start your career as an accountant. And well, you are working as an accountant for 10 years, but after 10 years, you discover that accounting now can be done completely by machines. So you cannot work as an accountant anymore. You will have to find something. And what other job can you find? Well, maybe you're going to find, let's say, you will have to struggle. You will have to look for another job. It will be very difficult because you don't have that experience. But maybe after all this upskilling, you find another job, which is going to be drone troubleshooter. So you are the person that is making sure that the drones fly properly. You are the person that is making sure that you are collecting the drones after they fall or after they reach a destination. Well, and you find this job, and for 10 years, you will continue doing this job. But maybe in the future, 10 years later, so after 20 years, turns out that this job is no longer necessary because drones are intelligent enough not to require troubleshooting, because they can troubleshoot themselves. And then you have to look again for another job. You have to do another transition, which is going to be very difficult because it will be towards a job that probably doesn't exist today. Maybe something in biotechnology, maybe something completely different that today we cannot even imagine, right? So a lot of people are going to struggle. This looks complicated, and a lot of people are going to have trouble doing that. These people that might have trouble will not be only unemployed, some of them will be unemployable. It will be very difficult for them to adapt to lifelong learning, and therefore they will not have many opportunities to get a job in this environment, right? And as you can imagine, the advent of the unemployable will result in an increase of income inequality, will result in an increase of social tensions and political tensions around the world. I'm not saying that it will have to result that way, but it might result in this kind of tensions, right? So now the question is, what can we do about it, right? Because one option is, okay, so we're not going to implement artificial intelligence. Let's take a break on that. It seems that artificial intelligence is going to have all these issues. So let's not implement artificial intelligence, and let's wait to see what happens before we go into trouble. But the other option, which is the option that I would recommend, is, well, let's still implement artificial intelligence because it comes with a lot of benefits. For example, benefits to the global economy through economies of scales, improvement of productivity, and it also comes with a lot of societal benefits as well. But what we really need to make sure is that the skill set transitions that I am describing are happening. We have to facilitate as a society these workforce transitions. You must make sure that or governments, companies, people, we have to make sure that we are helping other people changing jobs. And there are 4 ways in which we can help them, right? There are 4 things that we can say. The first thing will be investing in human capital. So governments, businesses, universities have to invest in human capital, invest in the skills that are going to be relevant in the future. And these skills are the quantitative skills that I was talking about, like, for example, mathematics, science, everything related to AI programming, everything related to data science. And also the functional skills that I was talking about before, such as leadership, emotional intelligence, etc., etc. So that's it. This is the first thing. The second thing will be assure strong economic growth. When the economy grows, people find jobs. And when the economy is not growing, people find it difficult to get jobs. So if you want the economy to grow, if you want people to find jobs, you have to make the economy to grow. This sounds very easy, and it's much more difficult to do that. But there are 2 kinds of schools here. There is one kind of school that says that by making the government big, by making the government invest big in infrastructure, in social programs, you can make the economy grow. And another school of thought says precisely the contrary. It says, like, well, I mean, just make the government small, make taxes small, make regulations simple, and make sure that the market is very, very efficient so that corporations and companies can really compete, and corporations and companies will take care of themselves and they will grow. These are two contradictory schools of thoughts when it comes to how governments can promote economic growth. And I think both schools of thought can work in different kind of situations. Number three will be increasing the dynamism of the labor market. So the third thing that we can do is, well, basically making it easy for people to find jobs, to change jobs. Research shows that when people change jobs more often, obviously there is more demand for jobs, and obviously salaries rise. If you want to reduce the problems that are going to arise from people not being able to adapt to new jobs, well, you have to make it easy for people to find jobs and to change jobs in the market. And the last thing will be to rethink social policies. A lot of people will struggle finding jobs, a lot of people will struggle economically, and these people might need to find safety nets. A lot of economists and politicians are starting talking about special social security arrangements, some of them including things such as a universal basic income, which basically means giving salary to everyone independently of whether they work or not. It is not guaranteed that it's going to work because it's very difficult to scale it up. But something that is true is that we really need to think about our safety net. And well, so this is basically the presentation that I had for you today. I would like to give three takeaways. So if I had to emphasize three things, these are the three things that I would like you to remember after this presentation. So number one, artificial intelligence is going to dramatically change the future of work. It's going to change the job of everyone. And we are going to have to upgrade our skills. We are going to have to move into quantitative skills, and we are going to have to move further into interpersonal skills. And that is not going to be difficult, or that is not going to be easy for everyone. A lot of people are going to find trouble doing that. And what we have to do is to help them making this transition. So these are the three takeaways that I will have for today. And now if you have any question about this topic, I will be very excited to let you know my thoughts and to try to help you with my answers. So thank you very much. So Jonathan, maybe we go into the questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Pedro, for your sharing. We do have a few questions on the Q&A page. I also have a question for you. But before I jump into the questions, for those who have attended, who are interested in asking Pedro, please, again, a reminder to go into the Q&A section down below and type in your answer. Before I jump into the questions that were asked by the participants, I actually have a question myself as I was listening to your presentation. So fantastic presentation, Pedro. I've learned a lot. And I'm a big fan of science fiction. So when you begin, you mention a few movies, which again, I've watched all of them. And a lot of what you mentioned seems to me like it's really short term. Sorry, if we can go back to the Q&A page, please. Thank you. So it's really more to your 5 to 10 years time frame, right? Which is fantastic. What I have in my mind was, what about the long-term implications? What about, let's say, quarter of a decade, 25 years, quarter of a century, 25 years time? How close will we be to singularity? I mean, a lot of us know that singularity is the almost, the AI would have evolved to a level where it's got natural intelligence and can think for themselves. What will happen then? Will AI be a true threat to us, just like what you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation with Terminators and Star Wars and so on? So that's my own question. Perhaps you can share a little bit of your thoughts on that. Yeah,
it's very difficult to go so much far, so far into the future, right? And to try to predict the future so far from here. You are absolutely right. Everything I have been talking about is what is going to happen in the next maybe 10 to 20 years, and we don't know what will happen after that. A lot of scientists are talking about the singularity. What does it mean? The singularity will be the point when artificial intelligence is able to achieve the same kind of results, or is able to meet the level of natural intelligence that we have at this moment, right? When a machine can do the same things that a human being can do, that is what we call the singularity. And well, I mean, it's very difficult from today's point of view to know when that is going to happen, or whether that is going to happen, because we have to make the difference between intelligence and self-awareness. I would say from today's point of view, even many machines, many algorithms, you could say that they are more intelligent than a human being, in the sense that they can make more calculations, they can have a more complicated judgment, but they are not conscious. They don't know they exist, right? What makes us unique is that we know we exist. And it's not guaranteed that machines in the future will be self-aware. So that is something to take into account. If that happens, I think that will be something huge for history of mankind, because you will have a new set of beings that are self-aware and that are intelligent. That basically means they are the same as you, right? I mean, they should be having human rights, because if they are self-aware and they are intelligent as you, they are fundamentally the same as you, right? And that can result in competition from them. That can result in a completely new society, right? There are some authors that are even talking about, well, basically, what is going to happen is that we are going to have an integration of bionic intelligence and natural intelligence. So everyone is going to have a combination of both, and we are going to have this kind of cyborgs that we see in films as well. And some authors say that basically that's going to create a divide between people who can afford this kind of technology, which will be very expensive, and people who cannot afford it. And those people who can afford it will be more intelligent because they have bionic parts in their brains, in their bodies. So, well, I mean, there is a lot of space for science fiction. Very difficult to predict the future, but yes, you are right. Everything I have said is about the next 10 to 20 years.
Thank you so much, Pedro, for satisfying my question. Now, we have a few questions here. I'm actually going to go to the more generic question first before I deep dive into some of the more specific questions. We have a question here from Pradiban. Hey, Pedro, thanks for sharing. Pradiban from Magic here. We work with your local corporates who are looking to explore AI into their business. He has two questions. The first question is, what are the key implications of AI in business? The following question is, what are the best practices about implementing analytics and AI in a business?
What are the key applications of AI in business, right? Well, there are many applications. I typically group them in five categories, 5 broad categories that apply to every business. And I'm gonna talk about these categories in the order of how mature they are. The more mature they are, the more short-term impact you can expect from them, right? So the most mature one, and the one that is driving biggest impact at this moment, is robotic process automation. Robotic process automation is just automated process-oriented jobs, as I was talking in the presentation, right? As I was saying in the presentation, is a software that is able to perform processes on a computer by using your credentials. Maybe they are copying information from the customer relationship management system into an Excel file, and then they are able to run the Excel file, and then they get the results of that, and they put it into an accounting system. They do the same thing as you do with your computer, with your credentials for your systems, for the ERP or for SAP or whatever system you use in the company. And they do that in your computer, in a personal computer, right? So this is the first kind of thing, robotic process automation. There are a lot of applications here to reduce cost, and there is a very large potential for cost reduction. Then after that, what we have is NLP, natural language processing, which is applying artificial intelligence for human language. I was talking about chatbots before. A lot of this can be applied to job matching. So for example, finding resumes, matching resumes of people to job descriptions, legal paperwork. So there is a lot of work that can be done in NLP. The third category will be machine vision. Machine vision is about understanding images. And there are many applications here: understanding faces, understanding emotions of people, understanding where people are. For example, in a shop, you can identify people and you can see in the shop what parts of yourselves they are looking at. And then you know where you have to put the best products, because that's where people look at. So that is the third one, machine vision. The fourth one will be analytics. And in analytics, I include everything that is using data for decision-making purposes. Some industries have been using analytics for decades. Telco is one of them. Banking is one of them. But other industries are much later into this process. There are huge applications of that. For example, predicting what is the best product for a customer, right? And many other applications when it comes to decision making. And the fifth area where we can apply artificial intelligence is cognitive automats. Cognitive automats are the kind of robots that we see in science fiction movies, are the kind of robots that basically can have a conversation, can have some understanding, can help having answering questions to a human being. And this is very much combining the other four categories. And there are many applications in customer service, for example. Right? So these will be the 5 kinds of applications. The order that I have used to go through them is from most mature to least mature. So once again, robotic process automation, natural language processing, machine vision, analytics for decision making, and finally, cognitive automats. Right? And then here we have another question about what are the best practices about implementing analytics and AI in a business. I mean, there are many things that you have to take into account, right? But I'm just going to talk about some of them, right? I think probably the first thing that you have to implement in a business is decision making. You cannot go into AI if you are not good already in decision making. So you will have to put all your data in a database, ideally a centralized database, because the power of data comes when different categories, when different varieties of data are put together. And then the power of data, the applications that you can do, or the problems you can solve with that data grow exponentially. If your data is very much clustered, you're not going to solve big problems. So that will be one. Second one, you need to invest in skills, and you need to invest in people who are able to make sense of this data. You have to hire data scientists, you have to hire data engineers, right? You have to create an analytics team. And that analytics team ideally should be organizationally coupled with daily operations, with daily decision making. That can be, for example, in marketing, or that can be, for example, in operations, depending on your industry. I would say that many companies are putting analytics in IT. For example, airlines always have analytics under IT. My preference will be to put analytics in a department that is running daily operations, because that then the use of data will be connected, will be more practical, right? These are some of the ideas that are some of the recommendations, high-level recommendations that I would make to any company that wants to implement analytics and AI.
Thank you so much for that, Pedro. We have another question here, a little bit more deep dive from Saikit Ng. Hello, Pedro. I am keen to know what has been the experience of Axiata Group gaining from AI and ML deployments thus far. Could you give specific examples? What are the problems that have not been solved but capable of being solved by AI or ML for Axiata or telcos in general?
So I'm going to talk about telcos in general. So what are the AI ML deployments so far in a telco, right? So there are a few categories. A lot of application in marketing and sales. Okay? One of the big applications is recommendation engines. So being able to understand what is the next best recommendation for every customer, and making a recommendation to each customer that is unique, that is personalized. What is the best product for you? knowing what you are spending. What is the best action for you? Knowing that maybe you are having a network issue, typically because in your home, maybe the network is not that good. Maybe because maybe you're having a billing issue. Maybe the plan that you are having is not the best for you. So making these kind of recommendations is a huge thing in which telcos are working right now. I think that will be the best thing in marketing. Then we have network, and in network, the telecom network, right? The big thing telcos are doing at this moment is using analytics in order to plan and to design the telecom network. How do we make sure that we make the right investments in the right places in terms of capacity or in terms of new towers, new antennas that are going to have a maximized return on investment for us, right? Designing the telecom network is extremely complicated, and you can use analytics for that. You can also use analytics to optimize the cost of the network. You can use analytics to predict when telecom devices in the network are going to fail, and you can do preventive maintenance. You can replace them before they fail. This way, you will get higher quality in your service, right? So this is a second area where telcos are working quite a lot. Third area will be probably everything related to customer experience, how to improve customer experience across every touch point through analytics, how to improve the journeys of each customer, how to have personalized customer journeys for each customer, right? So yes, I think these are probably three of the applications in which telcos are working most at this moment when it comes to AI and when it comes to machine learning, right? I think over the next few years, due to COVID-19, due to the economic environment that we're going to have, I think the applications of analytics on the cost side of the network are going to increase in importance. Also, with the arrival of 5G, these applications are going to increase in importance, and marketing applications will still be important. But what we're going to see growing is probably the network applications.
Well,
yep.
Fantastic answer. I've been having problems with my network this whole morning, and I wish that the telco that I'm listed to would use AI to solve some of the problems that I'm having and facing this morning. So my apologies if this morning earlier my video was a little bit sketchy. We have another few more questions. In fact, I'm going to just very quickly jump to Geraldine Wong's question. So Paul Morrissey, my apologies. We'll get to your question soon. So we have a question from Geraldine Wong. In terms of organizational structure, you mentioned earlier that it's best to embed analytics team closer to the business. What are your thoughts on federated, hybrid, and COE type of structure in a newly set up organization?
This is an excellent question. This is a $1 trillion question, right? Okay, a few thoughts. There are a number of organizational models for analytics in an organization, right? You can have them more centralized, more decentralized, etc. So let me start about decentralized models. This is what historically happened first, right? In an organization, typically when they started working on analytics, they created a small analytics team in marketing or a small analytics team in the other department, in different departments, right? This is good as a start, but the problem of this is that it's very clustered and it's very siloed. And as I was saying before, the power of data comes by putting the data together. So if you have a decentralized model, probably you are going to solve small problems, but the big problems you will not be able to solve because the big problems involve the whole company, involves marketing, operations, finance, everything. So that is something to take into account. Now, centralized models are good in the sense that all the data is being put together. Having said that, the relation with the functions, with the departments is a little bit weaker because you are not in the same team, right? So that's why I recommend to start with is that you can have a centralized model, but you put this department, this central department, under the biggest client for analytics in the company. And that biggest client for analytics in the company typically is marketing, it can be operations, it can be another department depending on your industry. But I think it's important that this is coupled organizationally with the biggest department that is using analytics in that company. Now, centers of excellence, hybrid, federated, that is interesting because basically you can have a centralized team with all the advantages of centralized learning, and at the same time, because it is a COE, it's a COE whose members are sitting in other departments, you are also solving the problem of being close to your customer. An analytics organization needs to keep a balance between centralized learning and distributed execution. Centralized learning is because of what I was saying before. Data has to be together in order to solve big problems, and distributed execution is you have to be close to your client in order to implement those solutions based on data. So federated organizations typically work well in this way. And what comes after the federated organization, chronologically, in the maturity journey of a company that is implementing analytics, is having a more decentralized approach. Once you have created your centralized team where you have hired all these data scientists, where you have hired all these skills, you can start thinking about sending these data scientists to each one of the departments. You can start thinking about putting analytics at the edge. You do it at this moment. Don't do it first. You do it at this moment after you have a centralized team. You put maybe some analytics consultants in each one of the departments. You put maybe people, some project managers that are focused on analytics, and we call them analytics translators, that can bridge the gap between the functional team and the central analytics department. And that is something that you can do that, and some organizations do it this way. So my recommendation will be, just to summarize what I have said until now, will be you probably want to start with a centralized team. After that, a centralized team can migrate into a customer, a center of excellence or a hybrid mode, and then it will be a decentralized model that will be most beneficial once you are mature enough in terms of analytics. That will be the transition that in general I would recommend for an organization.
Thank you so much, Pedro. I hope that answers the $1 trillion question from Geraldine Wong. Yeah. We have the last two questions, is both from Paul. I guess they are related back to my earlier question regarding singularity. So Paul asks, will machine have a personality, and will they have human rights?
Well, this is very much again in the area of science fiction. I mean, it is possible for machines to, it is possible to configure some personality traits in an AI algorithm. When it comes, for example, natural language processing, it is possible to train a natural language processing in different ways, with different vocabularies, or with different embedded reactions, so that a particularly trained robot reacts in a different way or talks in a different way from another one. Maybe one can be more, you can make it more rational in the way it talks. Another one can be more focused on more empathetic in the way it talks. Another one can be more emotional in the way it talks. So there are some kinds of configuration depending on the data that you use to train the natural language engine. They can react differently, and this is something that can be done. And there are applications of that, right? There are robotic customer service engines that are planned for different kinds of customers, and they are created, or they are trained to map the personality of different kinds of customers. Now, is that a real personality? It's very difficult to say, right? It's certainly not self-awareness, as I was saying before. So it is very difficult to say. We are getting closer to that, but I will say we are mimicking personalities. We are simulating personalities, right? Whether it is a real personality or not is something that will require much more research, but it could happen in the future. And then the question about human rights for robots. I mean, this is again science fiction, but if some people could argue that if you are in a society where you have a class of citizens or a class of members who have the same level of self-awareness as you and have the same level of intelligence as you, why wouldn't you consider them your peers? And if you consider them your peers, they should have the same obligations and the same rights that you have. Again, this is science fiction. It could happen in the future. But creating self-awareness can be very complicated from a technological point of view. So this is not something that is going to happen tomorrow. It's probably something that is going to take a long time.
Thank you so much, Pedro. And that brings us to the end of the Q&A session. We are 6 minutes over time. For those who have stayed until the end of the session, we do have a surprise for you. If my colleagues can move on to the next slide, please. Yes, here is the surprise. We will be running a virtual Corporate Innovation Summit next week on the 28th and 29th of May. For those who have stayed on, can actually use the promo code CISVC10 and you will get $10 off the original price of $49. You will be paying only $39. We have a fantastic lineup of speakers, more than 30 of them, from many different industries and countries, including a best-selling author, Dan Rome, and then the partner and managing director of IDEO in China, Tony Wong, and also innovation specialist and UI UX practitioner, Dr. Jacob Greenspan. Those are just some of the interesting names on the list, but do check out this event and use the promo code to apply if you are interested to attend this particular event. So with that, I thank you very much to all the participants and thank you very much to Pedro for speaking. That was a very informative and enlightening session. And we will be promoting the next session in a fortnight's time and also sending out the surveys. Please fill them in and give us your feedback so we can continuously improve the session to meet your needs. Thank you so much, everyone. With that, I bring a session to the close. Thank you so much, Pedro.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you to the RISE team for this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you.